Hi there, and thank you so much for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's coverage of Under the Dome. My name is Emily Brewer, and I will be one of your hosts for today's coverage. Under the Dome brings you direct access to your legislators so you can find out what's going on in the State House. So today we are here for two reasons, one of which is to chat with legislators in our coverage area. We meet with folks who are actually outside of our coverage area, but all of them give a look into what's going on in their committees, what priorities those committees are focusing on, the work that they're doing, and then we also ask each legislator what are they passionate about, what are they hoping to highlight in terms of bills and work that are outside of their committees as well. We had a chance to talk with pages, students from local schools, and teachers who are here advocating to save their schools amongst school redistricting legislation. So you can expect that in the following program, but we're also here as part of the Vermont Access Network. So the Vermont Access Network is a coalition of 24 media centers throughout the state of Vermont, including CCTV and Town Meeting TV. And we are here at the State House in the card room to advocate for increased support in the governor's budget. So the amount that we asked for, $1.89 million, was approved in the Secretary of State's budget and then was level funded by the governor. And so we are here asking, it's about $500,000 difference to support community media coverage throughout the state. So you can learn more about the Vermont Access Network by searching that on the internet. I don't know where else you'd search that. But otherwise, it's been great to thank our legislators for the support of community media that they have already showed. So thank you for tuning in to Under the Dome. I hope you enjoy the program.
My name is Abbey Duke. I'm a representative from Burlington. I represent Chittenden 17, which is the southern New North End and the western Old North End. I was appointed in the spring of, or really with a week to go in the session in 2024, to the seat that our current mayor had vacated when she resigned after she was elected mayor. And then I was elected for the position a few months later. So this is really my first term, second year of my first term. I serve on the committee called Commerce and Economic Development, which means that we focus on issues related to economic development, commerce, banking and insurance, except not health insurance, labor, including things like workers' compensation and things dealing with the Labor Department, and also consumer protection law. What that means in reality is we're working on some of the bills that we're working on right now include a bill that would regulate how non-competes can be used, and also something called, which is basically like if you're employed and you leave your employer, can there be an agreement in which you're not allowed to work for a competitor for a certain amount of time? So we're working on law that would really pretty significantly limit when those can be used, and also setting out parameters for something called stay or pay provisions, which is if your employer pays for you to get, for example, a college degree, how long can they require you to stay before, if you leave, you may have to pay back some of that. So, really looking at how we can protect employees and also protect employers. So that's an example of the kind of bills we're working on. We're working on also a number of bills related to data privacy. Working on stuff dealing with workforce development. So really, how do we help improve the access to training opportunities, and how can we grow our workforce? Economic development is obviously a huge topic. I'm particularly interested in how can we help our economy grow. We're in in many ways, a stagnant situation. Our population is pretty stagnant. We're an aging population. There's a lot of data out there that really show that if we don't do something to turn those things around, our affordability issues are only going to get worse. Some of those issues in particular that I'm interested in working on are stuff related to housing production, how do we decrease the cost of building housing, How do we help people turn more properties into properties that they can rent? How do those sorts of things? There's a lot of different things happening across the building. So a challenging piece is trying to follow, the different bills, and do what I can to follow and do what I can to influence them to go towards a good outcome.
And how do you follow them? Is like what is the process there?
Well, it's a good question. So the cool thing is that anybody can follow basically everything going on in the building. The website for the legislature includes, you can go through that and you can see YouTube links to every committee that are then stored, so you can go back, and what I do is I'll go back and watch hearings that I'm interested in and watch them on YouTube at double time. And also all of any written testimony, reports, all of that stuff is put up on the website. So there's a tremendous amount of resources there. There's also, the legislature has two really important resources. One is Legislative Counsel, which are the lawyers that work with us, and the other is the Joint Fiscal Office, which are the financial analysts. And all of the reports they produce also are uploaded onto the website. So you can really see a ton of the budget, all the budget documents. You want to see the budget documents, go to the JFO's website and you can get all of it. You just have to, and there's a lot of resources there that will tell you, give you background on the language being used, how the document, how you can navigate it all. So as legislators, we're following it. Really, a lot of it is the same way that anybody can follow it. And same thing in the building. You build relationship. I try to build a source, so to speak, on each committee, so I can say, hey, I see you're working on this thing. This is really interesting. Can you keep me updated on what's going on? And so that's what I try to do that. So, as I say, when people ask how it's going, it's like, well, it's not boring. Sometimes it's tedious. Don't get me wrong, because there's a lot of details, especially on the committee, which is really where you can have the most influence. When you're digging into those bills, you get very granular, and that can be tedious, but that's important because we need to understand when we are looking at laws and bills, what are the unintended consequences? What is, it's easy to have an opinion about something, and then the more you know about it, the more, almost everything, the more complicated it is.
Absolutely, that's a great point. So you brought up the budget. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share about the budget? What's going on with that? What people are talking about in terms of that?
Sure. I mean, across the board, what people are saying is the budget is tight, but that budget is also really big. So, and it's bigger, it's grown significantly over the past 5 years even. 10 years, it's grown even more. So, what people are saying is we need to really look at what we're funding, what is the most important thing that we fund, and maybe there are places where we can pull back. I think, but across the board, I think the reality is that we need to be laser focused on making sure we're getting the most value we can out of every dollar we spend, and really looking at just these huge cost drivers of, education, healthcare, housing. Like, how do we? I'm going to back up a little bit. Like, I'm a firm believer that the most important thing we need to do is grow our economy so that we can produce more economic activity for people who live here. That also will produce more taxes, right? So, in business, a lot of times we say, revenue solves a lot of problems, but you can't, we're not going to be able to just get out of all of our problems by increasing revenue. We need to be unless that increased revenue is because we have more residents and more economic activity. Does that make sense? It does. Yeah. So, but the budget is, I think every committee here is really taking their responsibility very seriously to look at their parts of the budget. So, like in my committee, we're looking at the budget of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, which includes, Department of Economic Development, includes housing, it includes labor. And really saying like, okay, we really want to know that the taxpayers' dollars are being spent well, and how can we really understand the places where maybe with a little bit more funding, there can be a lot more impact, and maybe there's places that we can pull back. So.
Well, thank you for speaking with us today. I just want to give you an opportunity if there's anything else that you'd like to mention that you haven't spoken about yet, and then also maybe how your constituents, the best way that they can reach you.
Absolutely, thank you. So one other thing I want to mention is that a group of us, a group of nonpartisan legislators, we've come together and created a caucus called the Caucus for Vermont's Economy. And we are working together to try to understand what are some levers and what are some places we can try to exert influence to help grow our economy. Right now we're focused on looking big picture at permit reform. How can we reform the way we do permitting and regulation? Not so that we decrease, not so we make it more lenient, so we just make it easier and faster and more transparent. So that's one thing I want to mention. And then to reach me, my email address is a great way to reach me, which is leg.state.vt.us. And you can also go to my website, which is abbeyduke.com, or maybe it's abbeydukevt.com. I think it's abbeyduke.com. And you can fill out a contact form that will come to me. But don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll do my best to, when people are particularly interested in issue, I do my best to, keep them updated. Like, hey, take a look at, this bill seems to be moving along. Because I guess I want to close with that message to anybody watching that the State House, it truly is a citizen legislature. There are people from all walks of life. Anybody can come here any day. You can sit in committees, you can watch the floor, you can interact with your legislators, you can really see the process up close, and you can have influence. Every single person can have influence on issues that they care about.
That's a great point to emphasize and end on, and thank you so much, Representative Duke, for chatting with us today. Appreciate it.
Brian Minier, representing Chittenden 11, which is South Burlington, the portion along Shelburne Road. And this is my second term. First term I was on the Education Committee, and then for a little over a year now I've been on the Corrections and Institutions Committee in the House.
And can you tell us a little bit about the work that committee is doing this session?
Meaning the Corrections?
The Corrections Committee, yes.
So as the name implies, it's sort of a split bailiwick. We do call it half of the work on corrections, half on institutions. And so with about a $210 or $220 million budget, half of the work is taking care of our correctional facilities. And the other part is funding government buildings, government land. So, yeah, making sure the money goes to the right places to take care of what we got.
Any particular bills or priorities coming out of that committee that you'd like to highlight?
Well, right now we're doing the Budget Adjustment Act, so that's more of the institutions kind of side of things. But to me, perhaps the more interesting part is the policy work that's being done in corrections. I don't know yet what's going to come out. It depends on how the committee goes. But just yesterday we took some interesting testimony from the Department of Corrections, which itself was a reaction to testimony that we'd had from the Vermont Asylum Assistance Project and the Vermont ACLU a week previously. The previous testimony had suggested that some of the ICE detainees that we have here are not getting access to legal representation. And with the clarification yesterday from the DOC, we're still looking into what's actually happening. Are we making sure that these people are being afforded their civil rights? So to me, that's very exciting work. Can we do something about it? It may not be legislation. It may just be policy or practice within the institutions. We'll see.
And tell me a little bit about, like, for you, what the shift was like going from Education Committee to the Corrections Committee.
Personally, it meant that I had to learn a lot more, which is fun. That's the part of committee that I really enjoy. I had a background on the South Burlington School Board for 3 years, so I sort of came in knowing a fair bit about education. I did not know very much about what was going on with corrections in the state, so that's been an education. In terms of what it means for interacting with the public and with my constituents, there's a lot more focus on education right now, and specifically education finance. So corrections had mostly been flying under the radar until we started picking up more federal detainees. And yeah, so less time in the public eye, I guess.
Yeah, and do you have, that being said, with the ICE detainees and the attention around that, is there a lot more, do you have people sitting in on the committee more so, people from other areas of the legislature, or even just the public, trying to know what's going on more so than usual?
Yeah, so I think and perhaps those watching, assuming anyone does, know, it is the People's House. You can come wherever you want and see whatever testimony you like. Our room happens to be at the end of the hallway over there and has seating for all of about 5 or 6 people. If we get crowded, maybe 8 or 10 with folding chairs. So typically it's just us and the folks who are testifying. But when I mentioned the testimony from DOC and from the ACLU, we had some students from Middlebury coming in. We had some activists coming in. I mean, again, you can't fit that many folks, but there has been interest.
And do you have any thoughts on the governor's budget coming from you? What have you heard from people? Anything you want to share regarding that?
I don't see any big changes happening with the Budget Adjustment Act. From a corrections and institutions point of view, it looks like his administration is proposing about $200,000 to go towards statewide pretrial detention. This is an effort to keep folks who have been accused of a crime but not yet adjudicated in the community and out of our carceral facilities, and I certainly support that.
And then I know that you have been to the CCTV and Town Meeting TV studio before. I can't remember if it was in your capacity as school board, whether that was for candidate forums or if you've joined us for Under the Dome. But I'm curious if you'd like to share any thoughts on what you believe to be the value of community media is.
Yeah, right on. So my own personal experience with you guys has only been for those forums as a candidate for school board or for my work here in the House. But I really value what you all are doing. I'm really sad about the lack of funding for local media, especially print. And whenever I want to catch up on something, I'm grateful you guys are here.
Thank you. And just finally, anything else you'd like to share that you didn't get a chance to talk about? And perhaps how can your constituents reach you if they'd like to ask a question?
Yep. The best way to reach me is by email, and I put that in every other paper article that I do. You can also find it pretty easily with a Google search. We were supposed to have our first public meeting. We do a forum every month at the public library. Last Monday, the weather didn't cooperate, so that's going to be another few weeks. I may start holding sort of office hours at a local coffee shop soon, just because I haven't had a chance to interact with folks as much as I'd like. But yeah, email's the best, and otherwise our next forum's coming up 4th Monday at the public library.
Amazing. Representative Minier, thank you so much for chatting with us. Really appreciate it.
I'm Barbara Rachelson, and I am a representative from Chittenden 14, which is part of Burlington. And it's an awesome honor to get to represent some of the people of Burlington.
Amazing. Thank you. And would you like to share what committee that you serve on and maybe talk about some of the priorities for that committee this session?
Sure. So I serve on a couple of committees. My main committee is the House Judiciary Committee, and we are looking at public safety, which has been a big issue. We look at court backlog. There's so many different issues related that the judiciary covers. So right now we're working on, just to give you an array, a bill that addresses animal abuse. Because in current law, somebody could be found guilty for cruelty to animals and not be prohibited from owning animals, which is a real loophole in our state law. And so we have a brand new director of animal welfare in our state who has been really helpful in educating our committee on what the loopholes are in our law, as well as what we could do to protect animals, support like humane societies that are not getting government funds and are feeding animals and taking care of animals that have been abused, etc. So that's one issue. We will be looking at the pilot court in Burlington that the governor started back in the fall, and look at those results and see how that could help other parts of the state and what it's done. We're looking at people found, people who are not competent to stand trial, and what those, what are we doing to restore competency? Because one concern is people can sort of hang out there for years. In the years, we've heard from a lot of victims who have talked about how hard it is to feel like there's no closure. We're looking at a lot of victim rights issues because we are one state that has not, we don't have embedded in our state constitution victim rights. While we have a great Center for Crime Victim Services, their funding is mostly federal. It's been cut. People frequently don't even remember to give victims the few opportunities they have to give their victim impact statements. And those are just a few of the many issues that we're looking at right now in our committee. I also serve on the Judicial Nominating Committee, which, as you know, the Senate right now is looking at the 2 nominations the governor made for Vermont Supreme Court Justice. That committee meets when we have a vacancy, and so we met back in the summer several times to fill vacancies. We don't fill them, actually. We send names of well-qualified candidates to the governor, and then the governor selects them, and then the Senate confirms. So it's kind of a hybrid. Some states elect their judges, which is frowned upon because it makes judges politicized. Some states, just the governor appoints without any input, and so this is a hybrid. I also am on the Judicial Rules Committee. That's a joint rules committee with the Senate, and we meet a few times a year. The things that we meet are kind of really technical, and I think those are my committees.
You're busy. Yes. You got a lot going on.
And I have introduced bills that have nothing to do with House Judiciary, but a couple I'd love to highlight are H768 is a bill that I have introduced, and I've introduced it in some form or another before, but I have paired with Representative Southworth from Lamoille County, and that is a bill that addresses car towing issues, particularly non-consensual tows. And as you know, probably all too well, that issue has been big in my district, but it is a statewide issue, which is why I'm excited to have Representative Southworth on there, because people keep saying to me it's a Burlington issue. And it's like, yes, there are factors in Burlington that affect towing, but the number of people that lose their car, like permanently lose their cars, either because they didn't get the notification or they can't pay the towing and storage charges, which are unregulated if they're on private property. And in Vermont, we let towers actively go out and look for cars to tow rather than just respond to like a police report. And that's not to say that towing isn't an important business, but the number, I cannot tell you the number of really sad stories I have gotten from people who just have gotten, into quickly, had $600, $700 towing fees, had to forfeit their car, had no recourse, and lost all the possessions in their car. Anyway, I also have 2 bills related to media. One is H377, which is a small, I was doing this because a lot of people had asked me, like, what are you doing for Burlington businesses?
For a vote when you're ready.
Okay. All right. That's House Judiciary. So I'll just sum these up too quickly. That one, we know Burlington businesses are hurting. Small business in lots of towns are hurting. So this would be a small tax credit when a small business advertises with in-state media. So for me, it was a win-win. It's like, let's support our media and let's try to support business. The other bill, which I feel strongly about for, in general, lots of different facets of government, is bill number H244. And that bill put out that that the state of Vermont spends a lot of money on advertising, carving out tourism, because that makes sense to advertise out of state for that. Let's use our local media outlets as a way of getting the word out. So that bill would require 90% of the state dollars to go towards local in-state media. Even if somebody wanted an ad on Facebook, if they go through a local, I forget the technical term for it, but somebody who could put the ads in for them, they get a financial benefit from that. And right now we know that media is hurting. We see papers closing, people getting laid off, and so it's really important that we do what we can to protect journalism and small businesses. So.
Well, Representative Rachelson, really appreciate all the hard work that you're doing, but also your support of local media, but also community media like CCTV and Town Meeting TV.
I am so grateful to CCTV because it's such a great way to reach constituents and for constituents to be involved. As you know, I teach a class at UVM, and I've had interns who have worked there. And so I've gotten to see just what a great tool it is for really anyone in our community who wants to learn and access media equipment. And so, yeah, I would pick CCTV to do an internship if I could. So,
well, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. We'll let you get back and do your vote.
And thank you for being here today. It's really great to see you.
Senator Tanya Vyhovsky. I serve the Chittenden Central District, which is most of Burlington, all of Winooski, a bit of Colchester, all of Essex Junction, and most of Essex Town.
And if you'd like to share what committees you're on and some of the priorities and the work that you have started to do this session.
Yeah, absolutely. So I serve on the Judiciary Committee, and then I am Vice Chair of the Government Operations Committee. On the Judiciary Committee, we've actually gotten a fair amount of press coverage this year. We're really working hard to do what we can to protect people in Vermont from federal government overreach. We tried to do some of this work last year and really discovered a lot of places where we ran into the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution. So I worked over the off session with a whole bunch of attorneys from different places, constitutional law professors, the ACLU, our legislative council, to hone in on what we can do that is protective and not feel-good legislation, but also defensible if and when it is challenged under the Supremacy Clause. And so some of the things we are nearing the end of our work on in Senate Judiciary are S-208, which is a bill prohibiting law enforcement from intentionally masking to disguise their identity. There are some exceptions to that for legitimate uses of masks. And S-209, which is an expansion of our sensitive locations for protection against civil arrest without a signed judicial warrant. Both of those bills should be finishing up their language changes and hopefully be voted on next week. We are also beginning to do some work on S-227, which actually isn't in Judiciary, it's in Senate Education, but it's a bill meant to protect and provide guidance to school districts on how to engage with federal agents and how to protect their students, communities, and families. In the Government Operations Committee, that's such a broad committee that does so much work. But some of the things that I'm really excited about is we have revitalized our government accountability work. That came out as a committee bill yesterday, and we'll actually be bringing it back to committee to do work on it. We did it as a committee bill because of the drafting deadline requirements and sent it out to bring it back to work on it. But that came out of the work from a summer task force that I was on 2 years ago, really looking to bolster accountability and oversight within government and build transparency. I'm also hoping to do some work with our Ethics Commission. First, I'm hoping that we fund our Ethics Commission so they can actually do the work we've tasked them to do. But I also have a bill on the wall that would enhance the disclosures around travel for legislators and the executive and certain executive branch officers. Really, it's not a prohibition on official travel, but it is a requirement that you report who's paying for it, what the purpose of the trip is, so that people know why their legislators are traveling under their official capacity. And I think there's also some other language that the Ethics Commission is hoping to get in that bill that would really just clarify and clean up the language so that it's clearer when the ethics rules apply and when they don't, because of the differentiation of core legislative function and non-core legislative function. Lots more we're doing, but those are sort of the things that are top of mind right now.
Anything outside of your committees that you are focusing on or would like to highlight as a priority for you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, S227, which is the schools bill that I already spoke about. I also am really hoping that we advance tenant protection this year. I have a bill, I think it's S98, but I'm not 100% sure, that is in economic development that I introduced last year, and that bill came out of the work that we did on the Landlord Tenant Commission the year before, and I'm hoping that aspects of that will come forward. With Vermont, facing a housing crisis, a homelessness crisis, we know that protecting tenants and keeping people housed is really the most efficient and inexpensive way to ensure that we're not exacerbating that problem. We also, are experiencing, I think it's -15 with the wind chill right now. Like, people shouldn't be forced to live on the streets. And our municipalities are at this point in time facing incredible financial burden to try and solve a problem that really should be addressed at the statewide level.
And if you'd like to share any thoughts on the budget, what you've been hearing from people, anything you'd like to highlight there?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, and we did a press conference to this last week. I agree with the governor that we really need to be centering protecting Vermont's most vulnerable, making Vermont more affordable, and growing Vermont's economy. I'm concerned, though, that the budget he advanced really misses the mark on all of that and is yet again an austerity budget that harms the most vulnerable, makes economy growth difficult, and really does nothing to make Vermont more affordable. And I would say the same is true of some of the plans coming forward on education. I think protecting public education in this moment in time when democracy is so under attack is critically important. And, putting a cap on ed spending doesn't acknowledge that costs are up. I don't really think we have an education spending problem. We have an education cost problem. And Act 73 and education caps address none of that. There's nothing within Act 73 that guarantees any property tax relief. It does harm schools. I have spoken to the schools in my district, and what I have heard is, in the Essex Westford district, if the bill as it is now were to go into effect, they'd be looking at a $6 million cut to special ed funding. If that were to go into effect, Winooski would be looking at an overall 40% reduction in their budget. And, and that list just goes on and on and on. And so I think we really need to look at reining in property taxes. I would argue yet again that we need to move to an income-based education funding system that asks our top 1/3 of earners to pay their fair share so that we can alleviate the burden on the bottom 2/3, and that we need to really look at the redistricting task force's really well-informed work to move forward with economies of scale in places that the evidence supports it makes sense.
And really quickly, you've been into the CCTV and Town Meeting TV studio many times. You're aware of our coverage of local elections, but also statewide. We've got a double election year this year. Is there anything you'd like to share with folks about what you see as the value of local and community media?
I mean, local and community media, I think it has incredible value. I mean, it is the place that people can go to access objective coverage of democracy, of elections. And again, circling back to democracy being under attack, frankly, journalism is under attack. Those places where people can go to get objective coverage is critically important. And, I worry with so many of the federal cuts and so many of the federal assaults on media that now more than ever we have to invest in that coverage and make sure that all people have access to a place where they can hear what people have to say and hear what's going on in this building and federally, frankly.
Right, yeah. Senator Vyhovsky, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to share, and maybe just tell folks how they can reach you if they have any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. If people have questions or people have concerns, my email address is really the best place to get in touch with me. I will say that with the Supreme Court nominees that were coming through, my inbox is full of about 1,000 emails every day. So if it takes me a few days to get back to you, please bear with me, but I will get back to you. And I'm always happy to hear from people what's on their mind. Senator Gulick and I also on Saturday, the 31st, from 10 to 12, have a constituent coffee hour at Leo & Company in Essex, and anyone is welcome to join us there and ask us directly or speak to us directly about what's going on in the State House and what's concerning them.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Senator. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
I'm Representative Edye Granning. I live in Jericho, represent Jericho and Underhill. I serve on the Commerce and Economic Development Committee. I'm the vice chair there, and What else do you want to know?
Sure, yeah. So tell us a little bit about the work that is happening in that committee this session, and maybe some priorities that you have within that committee.
Yeah, so Commerce and Economic Development primarily works on workforce development and consumer protection. We work with the financial regulators to make sure that our banking and insurance industries are doing what they're supposed to do for our consumers in Vermont. And our priority really is focusing on this year, the last few years, data privacy and protecting consumers in that area.
Are there any particular bills that you'd like to highlight, either within that committee or outside of it?
Sure. So in our committee, 211, H211 is our focus mainly right now, and we have the first in the U.S. data broker law, and that was, I believe, 2018. Somewhere right around there, and we need to update that because, as we know, tech moves fast. And so we need to change how we regulate the data brokers and how we ensure that they are protecting our data and making sure that people who are collecting our data aren't just selling it without our, approval.
And is there anything else that you'd like to share? Maybe perhaps how your constituents can get in touch with you if they have any questions or concerns?
Yeah, so email me for anything. You can call the State House. They give us notes all the time with people who call here to talk to us. I work a lot on education too. I co-chaired the task force to redistrict the schools in the off session, and so I'm keeping a very close eye on what happens with our education law, Act 73 that we passed last year, what happens with that going forward. Our committee works on technical education because that's part of workforce, so we're trying to make sure that all students have a path to a career through their education, and so we're just trying to make sure that even adults, everyone has access to technical education.
Well, I want to be mindful of your time, but I'm curious if you could just give a quick kind of run-through overview of what's been going on in terms of school redistricting.
Oh my gosh, that's a big question. What we're trying to do is make sure that property taxes stay affordable, which right now they're very, it's pretty questionable whether they're affordable right now, and that education is funded appropriately. And so it's a balance. There are a lot of costs in our property taxes that really should be general fund right now, and so my focus is figuring that out and how do we make sure that we're paying for primary education out of the education fund, which is funded with our property taxes. There are other taxes that also fund that, but so for me, that's really important. MAPS, which is part of Act 73, and we heard a lot that people are very concerned about what's going to happen with these maps. That's not my committee, so that's the Education Committee. They're focused on that, and we'll see what happens with that. There is our report. We had a 200-page report that came out of our work this summer, and it does show that we do need some consolidation, and we have some school districts that are in areas that they could work with their neighbors better to be more affordable. Also, there are a lot of districts in the state that are really efficient, and they're doing the work. And so to be efficient, to stay efficient, and to meet their student needs, and to do their best to meet the taxpayer affordability. But that's really hard right now because everything is expensive. Healthcare costs keep going up, and we have very little that schools can do about that. The Healthcare Committee here made some changes last year that kept the increase for teacher healthcare down this year. Still went up 7.2%, I think, but it wasn't double digit, which it has been for a number of years. So there are things that are happening in lots of different committees to help Vermonters have a more affordable property tax bill.
Well, Representative Granning, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and kind of breaking that down a little bit, because I think people can get really caught up in certain aspects of it. So it's really helpful to kind of hear what's actually going on.
My name's Angela Arsenault, and I represent Chittenden 2, which is most of Williston.
And tell me a little bit about what committee you serve on and some of the priorities that have come up this session and the work that you're doing.
I serve on the House Judiciary Committee. I am also on the Joint Judicial Retention Committee, and that committee does exactly what it sounds like. Every 6 years, judges are up for retention if they opt to be retained, and so we review their record and files, surveys from court staff and lawyers, other folks who work with the judges, and provide recommendations to the General Assembly. But as I said, my standing committee is House Judiciary. And this year we're looking at quite a range of issues, really. But we did just moments ago pass 2 bills out that are very important to me. The first being our sextortion bill, which also closes some gaps in our voyeurism statutes. So I don't know if folks are familiar with a case that it's probably actually hits pretty close to home for some here, that 2 sisters were recorded without their knowledge in a makeshift changing room. That video was then uploaded to the internet, and they didn't find out about it for years. And by the time they learned of its existence and the fact that it was on pornographic websites, they had no recourse on the criminal side because the statute of limitations had run out. So we just passed a bill that extends that statute of limitations to 40 years. And then another part of that bill is criminalizing sextortion, which is a rising problem in Vermont and everywhere, all around the world, actually, facilitated through social media, largely, when folks reach out to mostly young people and mostly young boys, often posing as peers, and strike up a conversation very quickly over, usually happens over the course of a few hours, wind up asking for explicit photos, nude photos. Those photos are sent, and as soon as the photos are sent, the person on the other end demands money in return for keeping the photos secret, confidential. They'll say, I've screenshotted your followers, I know who your parents are, I know who your girlfriend is, I'm going to send this pic, and your life is over. And this criminal activity has already resulted in 38 deaths by suicide in the United States that we know of, and we heard testimony that it's a big problem in Vermont as well. So I'm really glad that we're actually closing that loop, so that disclosing an image was already a crime, but the threat to disclose was not, and so this covers that.
Well, really important work. And so now that you have passed these 2 bills, what's the process now?
Sure. So now those bills go to the Senate to the Senate, presumably will be sent to the Senate Judiciary Committee. And then we have to hope that they take testimony, and they'll go through the same process that we did with a number of witnesses. And if it passes out of Senate Judiciary, then I skipped a very important step. I'm sorry. From our committee, it goes to the House floor. So we've passed it out of our committee. The bills now go to the House floor. We present the bills to the House, and then the House votes. Then the bills are sent to the Senate, to the committee in the Senate, and then the Senate votes if it gets passed out of the committee. And then if there are no changes, if there are no disagreements, it can go straight to the governor. If the Senate proposes changes, it comes back to the House, and we have to agree or not on those changes. If we don't agree, it goes to something called the Committee of Conference. I don't foresee that happening with these bills in particular, but there's a few different choose your own adventure type paths.
And so it's hard to know with any bill what the timeline is going to be. So could these bills, or any bill, can it go from session to session? If it doesn't pass fully in this session, would you take it up next year? How does that work?
Great question. So because we are in an even year, we are in the second year of a biennium. Our General Assembly operates on a biennium schedule. So each biennium, you can have holdover bills. So any bills that were live in 2025 can be carried into 2026. But at the end of this session, anything that doesn't pass out of both bodies would have to be reintroduced in 2027.
That's really important to note because I think that, given how long certain legislation can take to get through the whole system, that, if you're not in if you're in a year where you are now, like it puts extra pressure on it.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. The end of this session, leading up to what we call the crossover date, which is when bills need to pass from the House to the Senate or Senate to the House. That's your first big pressure point. There are ways to get bills to still move after crossover if you can find something to attach the bill to. It's a tougher road than just passing the bill on its own before crossover. So there's that crossover deadline, and then there's the end of the session, and then it's just like, see you in 2027, hopefully.
Well, thank you for telling us about those bills. Is there anything else in your committee, outside of the committee, that is really important to you that you'd like to highlight or tell us about?
Yeah, so part of the reason that I introduced the sextortion bill is because I am really focused broadly on online harms, prevention of online harms, addressing online harms, and ultimately trying to hold big tech accountable for the incredible damage they're doing to, of course, young people, but really, I think, society and democracy. So I have a number of bills relating to big tech and AI harms, and I was so excited last year and very proud that Vermont passed our phone and social media free schools bill. That was one that I really pushed last year, and the next step in that evolution for me and my advocacy is to tackle education technology, often called ed tech. So I have a couple of bills that do that, and I got really good news yesterday that a bill that I introduced with Representative Edye Granning of Jericho, who is the Vice Chair of Commerce. We have a bill in the Commerce Committee that would create an ed tech registry so that the state can vet ed tech products, because it's just too much to ask schools to do it, but there are myriad data privacy concerns, attention concern, ed tech products are proven to be ineffective and actually harmful, and I don't want to put the burden on schools. It's just too much at this point to ask them to roll it all back on their own. But if the state can help by saying, here's what you have to agree to do business in Vermont, and then we establish a registry, and schools can know if it's on the registry it meets our standards. That's what we're trying to set up, and they are going to be taking testimony on that bill next week, so I'm really excited for that one.
Well, a lot of great work being done this session, and really appreciate you taking the time to go through the process. There's a lot that goes into it, and one of the things that I love is just how accessible the State House is and Vermont's legislature is. So,
and a great example is that the bill that I started talking about. H626, our voyeurism, and we're calling it the image-based abuse bill, and to the fact that very clearly came from an article that I read, that a number of other representatives read, and we all said we have to do something about this. It's the power of reporting and journalism and strong journalism in our state, and the closeness to buildings like this and people who are in these positions to do something about it when we learn of harm. So thank you for all the work that you're doing as well.
Thank you. And just to end, if folks have any questions or concerns, what's the best way to reach you?
The best way is my email address, and I'm so happy the legislature has simplified email addresses. We're kind of in this transition period, so I have a simpler email address, angela.arsenault@vtleg.gov, so vtleg.gov, much shorter than our previous email addresses. Yep. Yes, so that's the best way, and if you email me and I don't email you back, write to me again, and I have a phone number as well on the bottom of my email address where you can text me, and that's also a good way to reach me. So.
Amazing. Representative Arsenault, thank you so much for chatting with us, and good luck this session.
Yeah, I'm Representative Joe Luneau from St. Albans City, and I serve on corrections institutions in the House.
Great. And so can you tell us a little bit about the work that that committee has done this session, as well as maybe some priorities that you are hoping to focus on as well?
So we deal with the institutions piece is primarily the maintenance and improvement of state buildings, and corrections is kind of self-explanatory. It talks about policy and the machinations of the Department of Corrections. Like most parts of state government, we have finite resources, and there are more legitimate asks than there are funds. So our job is really to prioritize where those funds should go. And there are similar challenges on the correction side. So yeah, that's kind of the thrust of what we do during the day.
And any bills in particular that you'd like to talk about or highlight for us?
Yeah, well, this morning, for example, we're getting testimony on adding air conditioning to facilities in Springfield and Newport, because right now a lot of our correctional facilities don't have air conditioning, which is an issue for residents, and it's also an issue for staff. And there's a staff retention challenge, and that's a piece of it. So,
anything you want to talk about in terms of maybe the budget process, thoughts on that? What are people talking about in terms of that?
Well, I serve on a money committee, but it's a much smaller money committee, which accounts for less than 1% of the state budget. But if you look at the proposals out there, it looks like a best case scenario. We're looking at a mid-single-digit property tax increase, which I do not support. We'll see where things sugar off here. There's a lot of distance between now and then, and of course we got Act 73 school district resizing, which is the elephant in the room this year. And everybody's looking forward to that. I don't think there's been any movement regarding that subject yet. We're right at the end of week 4. Today's Friday.
And how many total weeks in the session?
That varies. Last year we went just about until the end of May.
Okay.
We start first week of January.
All right. And we were chatting a little bit about Northwest Access and community media. Is there anything you want to talk to about in terms of like what you see as the value of community media for residents in the state?
Yeah, well, selfishly, I think I'm going into my 5th year of being the color guy for Bob White's football. So I get to interface directly with Northwest staff in that regard, and it's a lot of fun. But, as our traditional media sources either go away entirely or substantially diminish, I think Northwest really fulfills a critical need in just making people aware of what's going on in their government and their community. And, certainly wish you the best in your funding requests.
Thank you so much. And just before we wrap up, if your constituents have any questions or concerns, what's the best way to reach you?
Well, you can call the Sergeant at Arms, which people reach out in that regard occasionally. And if you get on the State of Vermont site, all members of the legislature have email there, and you can reach out to me in that regard. I check it pretty much daily.
Amazing. Representative Luneau, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My name's Liam Chase. I'm from Berrytown, and what we do here is we deliver messages between the representatives and senators, and yeah, that's most of it.
My name's Elsie Kidder. I'm from St. Johnsbury, Vermont, and yeah, we deliver messages when the legislators are in session and when they're not in session to their committee rooms.
I'm Ailey Corbett. I'm from Montpelier, Vermont, and I agree. Our main job is just mail, documents. A bunch of it is really confidential, so we're the last ones to get it before it goes to the person, so it's really important we track everything down.
Right. That's awesome. Was there anything particular that drew you guys to want to become pages, or was what really drove you to apply and come to the State House?
What drove me to apply, I just really wanted to see the process of how bills and laws are made.
What drove me to apply is I think it's really good, meeting people from all over the state, and also, this is going to look good on resumes and stuff like that.
I agree. Meeting people from all around, it's relationships that you would have never had in the first place. Also, with this comes a lot of transferable skills that you can take into high school, because we'll be there next year, and just becoming more independent and being able to talk to adults better.
Well, I think you really kind of touched on my next question. I was going to say, what do you think are good skills that you are building as, what has the PAGE program really helped you build and learn?
I think the page program has helped me build a lot of like confidence when like talking to random people that I don't know.
This might sound a little random, but like time management skills, like balancing schoolwork with like page work and all of that.
I think for me, really becoming more outspoken, because it's very much up to you to create the conversations you need to have and ask people questions. If you really want to learn something, it's like up to you to do it.
And then this is kind of like a random question for me. Like, how does it work for you guys for not be in Montpelier to like come? Like, how do you guys take time out of your day to like get here and balance that with work in your outside life?
I think you definitely have to get up a lot earlier than 6:30 to get here in the morning, especially with our Vermont snow, like causing ice and stuff.
Yeah, so I from St. Johnsbury, so I take an RCT bus over, which is a really great like free program that the state provides.
I just have to drive down the street every day, but we're here Tuesday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then Mondays we get to like go to school.
Well, that's great. That's really interesting. I don't really have any more questions for you guys, but thanks for taking some time to talk to us, and it was good to learn about what work you guys do.
Thank you.
Hi, Leonora Dodge. I represent the town of Essex and a portion of the city of Essex Junction, and I sit on housing.
And so could you tell us a little bit about the Housing Committee as well as the work that you've done in that committee this session and maybe some priorities that have evolved?
Sure. So we are looking at what the federal cuts and federal priorities have had as an effect on Vermont housing. We're trying to fill in gaps. We just funded Section 8 vouchers, which if we lose some this year, it would affect next year's amount of vouchers that we could qualify for funding. So that was really important, and we managed to get that in the budget adjustment just now that was just voted off the House floor. So I'm really excited that we did that, because that would have been a cascading effect of terrible downward spiraling. So that was really a priority for me coming in right away, the first weeks of January. We're looking at so many bills that have been coming through, and our committee is developing a lot of important bills, especially around landlord-tenant, and I would encourage folks to get involved, stay engaged, and follow up on those. We hear horror stories of both the tenants and the landlords, and we're trying to thread the needle between, Vermont being one of the states that has sort of the longest eviction process, but also we have terrible homelessness, and we have such tiny housing availability for people who lose their housing. So we're trying to thread the needle there by listening to all the stakeholders and developing something that will hopefully keep people housed and keep people in the business of renting long term to permanent housing. And then aside from my committee work, we're also working with a lot of stakeholders. We just had a press conference last week or two that pushed out a slate of immigration defense bills that also essentially hold due process and defend our civil rights. And when you defend the civil rights of one group, you're really defending civil rights for all of us, as we are seeing across the nation with abuses. And so I'm really happy to say that I'm sponsoring a lot of bills that are also coming up in the Senate that involve making sure that our law enforcement are accountable and identifiable, making sure that people who might pose take on like a vigilante role are also held to account, making sure that we keep protecting our sensitive locations, that our schools, our public libraries, our healthcare centers are safe from enforcement that has nothing to do with the safety of our communities. And then the final bill is that I'm pushing is the legal representation, right to legal representation. So if you are an immigrant facing deportation, you are held in detention in criminal facilities in our state, and yet you don't have access to an attorney. So, when you are arrested, you were told, if you don't have an attorney, one will be provided for you. So that is not something that all states provide for people who are facing deportation. And so we know that you're 11 times more likely to be able to win your asylum case, your, advance from green card to citizenship, et cetera, if you have legal representation than if you don't. And so we know that there's such a backlog, and the stakes are so high, and our attorneys that do work immigration cases, it's just like this hodgepodge of pro bono efforts and very few private attorneys. And so we're trying to make sure that we put into statute that legal access is a priority in our state, and that we can guarantee that for people that are held. And that will help our workforce, our communities, keep our families safe, and help all Vermonters reach our housing targets and our healthcare targets and all that.
Well, really important work being done. Thank you so much for explaining that. And just really quick before you go, I'd love if you want to just talk a little bit about what you see as the value of community media.
Yeah, I have learned so much as a constituent myself through this Town Meeting TV. I get to watch proceedings and meetings and conferences and panels that I can't attend in person. I'll watch them late at night. I'll set the playback speed to double so that I can, get all of the information. It is so valuable, and unfortunately, I realize that it's funded by a mechanism that is losing dollars, and so just like our transportation, budget is suffering because we rely on a gas tax, and people are buying as much gasoline. Not as many people are paying cable bills, and so that is tough. So I strongly believe that this is a public benefit and a state good, and I hope that we will be able to help sustain CCTV, because it's a great Orca Media, all of the community TV stations, really important.
Representative Dodge, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Really appreciate it.
Great. Hi. Who are you? Tell us who you are.
I'm Tobias Paquin.
I'm Auden Manucci.
And I'm Grace Cardy.
Grace, what are you doing? What is your sign about?
Our sign is about, we want some people to stop in and visit our work, because we put a lot of hard work into our work. And we like to support all of the schools and all of the people that try to help the schools. And I just wanted to say thank you. And we have some very good school leaders and classmates. So we're here to encourage people to visit our booth.
And you're you're downstairs. What is your booth about? What are you advocating for?
We're wanting people to like small schools and appreciate them.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, I feel like kids were trying to get out of school. Do you like school?
Yes. Yes, we like school. We especially love it because us three are in the same class and we're raising trout in our classroom.
What? What are you going to do with the trout?
We're going to release them in the river with Rudy.
Yeah. Tell me about it. What's your teacher like?
She's like probably the best teacher we've ever had. Takes care of the trout, lets us take care of the trout, and does fun stuff with us.
And why do you think it's important to make sure people support schools? Why is it important to you?
It's important to me because schools help people get education, and good education is something that we all need so you can get into college and get a good job. And especially in these areas where there's not a lot of people, we need more people to recognize our schools and to come to our schools and to have fun activities. So we thought instead of them coming to us, we would come to them. So that's pretty much why we're here at the State House today.
And it sounds like you're all helpers. So when you get bigger, I mean, you're already helping now, but when you get bigger, what kind of things do you want to do to help other people?
When I am older, I definitely want to be I'm obviously going to get a job, but I think that I might want to join Girl State because I think that would be fun.
How about you? What do you want to do? What are you doing now to help people, or what do you want to do? How is your school going to help you help other people when you get older?
Our school educates us well, and when I grow up, I want to be a chicken farmer.
Cool. Awesome. How about you?
I think our school educates us really well. So when I grow up, I'm probably going to be a principal like ours.
All right. So thank you all for being here in Montpelier. Oh, come on over here. Oh, we're going to just turn around. Hi, welcome. Tell me your name.
Hi, I'm Stella Ballou.
Yeah, tell me, Stella, why are you here? I'm going to try to stand up a little bit.
I'm here today to say how great our school is.
Yeah. Why? Why is that important?
Because school's very important because no one would know very much if school wasn't here.
Yeah. And how are the legislators treating you? How are you being accepted?
I'm being accepted because we got freedom and stuff, so that's how I feel accepted.
Yeah. Is it fun to be in the State House?
Yes.
Yeah. Why?
Because there's so many monuments and stuff.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. And go, keep on doing what you're doing. Okay. Could you just introduce yourself to the viewers and tell us what committee you're on?
Scott Beck. I'm senator from the Caledonia District, and I'm on my standing committees are Senate Natural Resources and Energy and the Finance Committee.
Yeah. How is this year? The legislative season is just, 4 weeks old. How's this year feeling to you so far? What's the collegiality like, and what are some of the priorities that you're looking at for this session?
Well, we are finishing up the fourth week here, and the priorities, and I think the work is all focused around mostly affordability and the education fund and school redistricting. We have a lot of weighty issues in all of those different categories and funds, and so I suspect that when you have really, really big decisions to be made, then things start to extend a little bit, and the stakes become very high at the end of the session. So I would expect that. Collegiality, I think everybody's been respectful. I hope that continues, and if we do break collegiality, I hope it comes back very quickly.
Can I ask you to expand a little bit on, last year we did a series on, what affordability means? Because affordability can both mean like money's not leaving your pocket, but also that you have the services that you need to live in the state of Vermont. So talk to me a little bit about how you cut that line in a tight budget year around affordability.
Well, affordability to me means is that Vermonters have the money in their pockets to do what they need to do. And right now, between the cost of energy and the cost of housing and property taxes and health care, Vermont is not a very affordable place to live for a lot of people. And so I think what we should focus on in this building is getting the costs of those input factors down. Because to be perfectly honest with you, we don't have enough money to make up the difference in the state budget. So we have to get the costs down so Vermonters can afford to live here and not just be a state where people are here because the government has billions and billions of dollars to keep them here.
And what are some of the ways that you think that's going to happen during this session?
Well, I think property taxes, we need to use our resources to get those down. Energy would be, I think, wise to revisit the renewable energy standard and the clean heat standard. I think with housing, we need to do permit reform so it's cheaper to build housing in the state of Vermont. We need to look at all those things in totality, how they interplay with the budgets, and it's just really expensive to live in Vermont. We're the third highest tax state per capita in the country, and when you layer that with income, we're maybe even the highest in the country. So you can't afford to live like that and run a government like that when you have an average tax base.
And what about the idea of finding new revenue sources? Is that something that is even being considered this session? Is that...
It is being considered by some, not me. I don't think we have a revenue problem. I think we're spending too much money, and we need to focus on the spending side of the equation.
Is that a popular opinion or less than popular opinion in the State House this year?
I don't know. We'll find out. I think voters clearly spoke in 2024, and they'd said enough with the taxes.
What are the ways that you heard voters speak? What was the signal to you from voters? I mean, you're talking to constituents, and certainly that's something that everybody's hearing. But what are the signals that tell you that that's the direction Vermonters want to go in?
Oh, I think it's emails, it's personal conversations, it's how they behaved at the ballot boxes. November of 24, they're taxed out and they don't have any more to give, and they're asking us to make tough decisions to deal with the spending side, to make the efficiency decisions that need to be made, and to downsize programs that just the bang for the buck isn't there.
Well, if folks want to talk to you or get more involved, how do they reach out?
They can contact me at my ledge email. It's online, and be more than happy to have a conversation with them.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. I know this is not a job that people do because they're lining their pockets.
Get rich quick scheme.
No, appreciate you.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Tell us your name and the committees that you're serving on, Senator.
Hello, Megan. My name is Martine Gulick, and I am Vice Chair of Senate Health and Welfare, and I also serve on Senate Finance.
Now, one of the things that you spent your summer doing was working on the Education Reform Committee, if I get that right. Tell us what that was like, and what came out of that, and how are you bringing that into this session?
We were actually called the School District Redistricting Committee, or actually Task Force. It was a long School District Redistricting Task Force. Yes, I spent most of my summer working on that committee. We were instructed by Act 73 to put together new maps for new districts. What we decided after months of investigation is that there is not a lot of data around what we were trying to accomplish, which is affordability, equity, and quality. There's just not a lot of evidence that speaks to large forced mergers as being something that achieves any of those desired outcomes.
Now, what's interesting is you have a group of young advocates downstairs in the building advocating for saving our schools. Have you had a chance to visit with them?
I have not had a chance yet today. I did see the Rural Schools group. They were in the Senate chamber, so I did get to say hi to them. Yeah. They're with Jackie Coleman, it was great to see them.
Yeah. And what are you hearing? What are you hearing from outside of Chittenden County about that school redistricting work that you were doing?
Outside of Chittenden County, folks are very much in favor of it because it really saves Vermont schools in rural areas and in areas where education is such an important part of a community. It really, we really try to make sure that we don't have public school deserts in the state. So folks have been very appreciative. They also really respect their own voice as a community, and this bill really preserves that as well. I mean, the work that we did really preserves that.
So what are you bringing into this session? What are you hoping to get done? What's going to feel like I'm serving my constituents and the people of Vermont?
Thank you for the question, Megan. Obviously, I want to save public education in the state of Vermont. Our public schools are a safety net for many families, many vulnerable families, and many vulnerable communities. So that is a top priority for me. I want to make sure that our state is affordable, but what is embedded in Act 73 doesn't actually accomplish affordability. So I just want to say that as a priority. There are some bills that I co-sponsored, S208, S209, S227, and S301. Those are all bills that will protect folks from the frankly, some of the terrorizing that we're seeing coming from ICE in other states. So making sure that agents of the state are held accountable and that folks are protected in this state. And we have one that protects kids in schools. We have another one that protects folks in public spaces. We have one about masking. And S301 is actually a civil rights bill.
And if folks want to get in touch with you or find out more about what you're working on, how do they do that?
Thank you for the question. I have a webpage, martinegulick.com. mgulick@leg.state.vt.us is our email address, my email address. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, I try to cover my bases, but I would be happy to speak to my constituents anytime.
Hey, I'm Johnny Gifford here with Van at the State House for our card room day, and we're here with Zon Eastes representing, what towns do you represent?
Guilford and Vernon.
2 towns.
Yes, I do.
And this is your second year of your first biennium, is that right?
Yes.
And how's it been this session so far? It's just ramping up.
Yeah, the 4th week, incredibly intense, incredibly intense. I mean, people that have been here longer probably have the swing of it, but it's amazing to me how much is going on here.
And what are you kind of focusing on right now?
Well, big picture for me are the issues that we are all talking about: our education, relief for tax relief for folks, dealing with housing. That's a major issue. Dealing with healthcare issues, they're huge. Personally, I'm on the Human Services Committee, and so I just reported a bill last week in which the Senate is looking at now. The House passed a bill to allow our Commissioner of Health to create a Vermont-based, scientific evidence-based panel of recommended immunizations. Since the CDC just cut their panel by 35% a few weeks ago. So our bills, we anticipated something like that. Our commissioner anticipated that. So we're on it.
So we're seeing that the gaps that the feds are leaving us, and where Vermont's taking hold and taking responsibility on a lot of things now. Do you get that sense on a broader scale, even beyond immunizations or science?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's all sorts of issues with Medicaid. There's all sorts of issues with all sorts of funding that's was there and is now no longer there, and it's just we're learning about it all the place. We just passed our budget adjustment act for this fiscal year that we're in. And we're having to address some of those issues now. Thank goodness the House doesn't disagree with the governor right now at all.
And the governor determined those adjustments.
Yeah, he proposes a Budget Adjustment Act, and we've been looking at it. And this morning we just passed that. We are basically in 100% agreement. Very, very minor disagreements here and there. And now it'll go to the Senate, and we see what happens next.
Sounds like you got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, it's really a lot.
Because you're thinking about the past, the present, and the future sort of all at once.
Yeah, it's all packed in, and the other thing that's tricky, what we love about the Vermont legislature, I've always loved this about the Vermont legislature, is how citizen-based it is. Not only am I a citizen legislator, but we're constantly listening to people from Vermont talk about issues. We bring in experts, we bring in people with lived experience, we bring in people who just have a feeling about things. I just heard the most amazing testimony from a guy about homelessness and the work he's been doing in a very small town in Vermont, at the edges of support, at the edges of agency assistance and that kind of thing. The amount of work that they're doing, it's just heart-rending. And so it's really impressive to be here and be engaged with that kind of stuff. We can't move fast enough is the issue because of all the processes we have to go through to create a bill and make it happen. And I don't want it to go any faster because you want to be able to have Vermont voice and everything.
There's a system of checks and balances and the multiple bodies and committees and everything. Everyone's got to be on the same page, and that's a big part of it. But it also means it takes a little bit longer for progress to be made.
Yeah. So when Vermonters get frustrated or disappointed that we're not moving or not answering questions quickly enough, it's because we're really trying to be thoughtful. I really believe that.
Yeah. I get that sense too, just sitting in the House floor and just getting a sense of what you're working on and what everyone thinks about the issues. It takes a long time and a lot of just talking to each other too, and just in a hopefully in a collegial way, I would imagine.
And there's a lot of that. I mean, the idea of I feel like there's a lot of collegiality. Certainly we have our differing points of view and things like that, but people are committed, I think, to working in this house for Vermonters, and that's really very inspiring.
Well, that's great. Thank you for your service, Zon. Thanks for taking a moment to chat. Is there anything else you want to plug?
You guys. I'm really glad that Van is here today. I love this room, and but it's really great you guys are here today doing this. Cool.
All right, so do you want to start off by introducing yourself and telling people what committees you're working on here?
Yeah, I'm Representative Mary-Katherine Stone of Burlington, Vermont, Chittenden 14. I serve on House Government Operations and Military Affairs, and I am one of the Assistant Majority Leaders for the Vermont House Democrats for External Communications. So doing this work right here.
What kind of things have you guys been working on lately in those committees? Any bills that you're feeling passionate about or excited to announce?
Yeah, one of the reasons I love serving on that committee is just because there's such a wide array of topic matters. But one particular issue that's important to me is centered around Veterans Affairs and supporting veterans and their families. And so I have two bills that I'm really excited to hopefully be shepherding through that committee. One is to help military spouses have preferential hiring, just saying, hey, we recognize you and your specific challenges, and we want to really help those military spouses ground themselves in the communities and contribute to the workforce, state workforce in particular. And another one is to help recognize disabled veterans and allow them to have free parking at metered spaces. So,
yeah, wow, that's really important work.
Two wholesome bills that I'm hopefully going to be shepherding through pretty soon.
Very wholesome bills. And speaking of wholesome, can't ignore your baby over here. How is it like being a mother working in the State House? How has that environment been for you?
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. I will say it was actually more difficult being pregnant and serving last session and being morning sick and not being able to tell anyone what was going on and still having to show up for work even though I felt like death. It's been more fun this year. I'm very thankful to have a pretty chill baby and to have such a supportive community around me here in the State House. You'll see him on the State House floor, oftentimes being passed around and bringing some joy to other legislators. So while it's been a little bit of a circus at times, the payoff is worth it.
Wow, that's so awesome. And is there anything else that you want to share to the public? Any news, anything on your mind?
Oh, yeah. Well, today I'm hustling around the State House lobbying for one of my bills, H536, which is proposing to ban toxic chemicals from being in baby food. And it's pretty gross that that's not already a thing. And I'm talking about things like lead and arsenic and mercury, making sure that they aren't on shelves here in Vermont and being sold. So, yeah, that's something that I'm excited about, but also shocked that we're even having to work on to make sure that that's not a thing.
Yeah, I had no idea that was something to even worry about until now.
And now
that's,
you do. Right.
I mean, that's not something you just forget about.
No.
Yeah.
Lead and baby food.
Yeah. And what's a great way for constituents to reach you or ask any questions that they might have?
Yeah. Well, I'm most active on TikTok and on Instagram Reels. But I also can be, you can reach me through my legislative email address, which is on the Vermont Legislative website.
I'm Representative Brian Cina from Burlington, Vermont, Chittenden 15, which is part of the Old North End and most of the East District of Burlington.
And what committees, what committee or committees are you serving on? And tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing within that and priorities that have arose.
In the legislature, I serve on the House Healthcare Committee and also on the House Ethics Panel. I just didn't want. I'm letting them pass. They don't make any wise remarks. So, So I'm Representative Brian Cina from Burlington, Vermont. I represent part of the Old North End and all of the East District. I currently serve on the House Healthcare Committee and on the House Ethics Panel.
And tell us about the things that come to mind in terms of priority or any bills that you want to highlight.
Well, in the House Healthcare Committee, we continue to try to address the cost of healthcare. The cost of healthcare is a massive barrier for people. and it's a barrier on every level of the system. It's a barrier for individuals who are facing skyrocketing premiums for health care and cost sharing, including deductibles and co-payments, as well as the cost of doing business as a healthcare provider is out of control. We have seen for many years the cost of hospital care rising out of control, the cost of prescription drugs out of control. And so the Healthcare Committee has been working on finding ways to improve access to health care by reducing cost. For example, trying to reduce cost of pharmaceuticals, trying to control the cost of healthcare premiums in the face of cuts to federal subsidies, trying to maintain access to Medicaid, and in the face of federal changes, also trying to protect people's access to gender-affirming and reproductive health care in the face of federal changes. So a lot of the work of the House Health Care Committee over the past few years has been maintaining access and trying to reduce cost. There are some new policies rolling out that are promising. For example, something called reference-based pricing, which is the Green Mountain Care Board, which currently regulates the rates of insurance plans, and approves hospital budgets, will be given more authority to control cost by actually setting the prices across services in the hospital system, and this reference-based pricing should be able to bring cost under control. In other states, it's reduced healthcare spending by double-digit millions of dollars a year, and then that's money that those savings can be applied toward reducing premiums or towards reinvestment in other pieces of the healthcare system. So that's a big part of the work. Another area that we're working on this year is looking at corporate control of healthcare, and we've been learning about how private equity firms are finding their way into the Vermont healthcare system and investing in healthcare assets. And a pattern that we've seen is that private equity can be a tool to allow people to invest their money into services that help people, but too often private equity firms will invest in healthcare assets and then reduce staff, reduce the quality of care, sell off property, and then abandon the communities after they've extracted. They've sort of supported resources only to extract from them and then leave people without the services. So we're looking at what action can we take to allow for the benefits of private equity investment while protecting our healthcare infrastructure from the potential harm. Another area that we're going to be hopefully doing more work on in the Healthcare Committee this year is the role of technology, especially artificial intelligence, in the healthcare system. What we are hearing is that artificial intelligence has infiltrated all aspects of the healthcare system, just like it has other sectors. However, in the healthcare sector, it poses a unique risk to human rights because we are on the verge of we already have crossed the threshold of technological innovations that allow corporations to record our neural data through headbands and other methods. And without neurological rights and protections in place, we are under threat of seeing corporations mine the minds of people for their memories, thoughts, feelings, and other data, and then use that data not only to profit themselves, but then to control human behavior, because there are no protections in place right now saying that a corporation can't influence your behavior through a headband. And when you click on that 100-page I consent thing every time you update your operating system, we're giving permission away to these companies to use our data. We're paying them to make money off of us through our data right now. If we don't put in protections of neurological rights, we're going to be, in order to use our devices, we're going to be giving them permission to invade our mental privacy and even further potentially influence our personality, influence our choices and our behavior. And what's especially concerning is that these headbands are not regulated currently by the FDA because they're wellness devices. They're not used as medical treatments. And the next area that they're going to be expanding into are video games. And so could you imagine your child asking for the latest video game interface, which is a headband, and the parent being like, okay, not understanding that when they click yes on that box, that the company now is recording your children's thoughts, memories, feelings, or even influencing your child to want things. So then, Mom, can you buy me this new thing? And reinforcing those impulses. So we really have to look at how technology, as it evolves, is we need to look at ways to maximize the benefits of artificial intelligence while mitigating the risks. So that's going to come up in the healthcare committee, but it's going to come up in many committees this year because it has infiltrated so many ways of life. One other thing I'll say about healthcare is that we are facing a threat to access to care around the state because the system has not been sustainably financed. The governor says that universal health care is a failed idea, but the actual failure is the current private insurance system. And so what we really need to do is instead of throwing more money at the broken system of the private insurance system, we have an opportunity right now to look at how to reinvest funding into providing health care as a human right and reinvest funding into guaranteeing a public good in the healthcare system. And so one way we may do this is through universal primary care, because our primary care practices are struggling. It's the amount of spending on primary care is much lower than other aspects of the system, but if people have access to primary care, it prevents spending down the road on those other pieces of the system. So we have an opportunity this year as we look at as trying to save our crumbling healthcare system, to look at ways to reinvest spending in the system as we control cost into providing better care delivery. And if we do things right and we get the formula right, we could improve health outcomes down the road as well as quality of life right now and potentially lay the foundation for a universal healthcare system and finally follow through on the promise of Act 48 in 2011, which guaranteed Vermonters the right of health care.
Well, really important and forward-thinking work happening in the healthcare committee this session. Is there anything else that outside of your committee that's really important to you that you'd like to speak to or highlight?
I think another important area is housing. Housing is healthcare. Housing is an important social driver of health. And in addition to being on the House Healthcare Committee, I am the appointee from the National Association of Social Workers on the Land Access and Opportunity Board, and I'm on the board of the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, so I have this outside interest in providing housing and land access to people as a human right. And there is a bill that I wrote with the Land Access and Opportunity Board, which is currently in the Housing Committee here, that would look at creative investments in new kinds of affordable housing infrastructure. For example, coming up with ways to incentivize the sale of properties to the tenants first before they go on the market, so that tenants can create cooperatives to cooperatively own their buildings, or investing in programs that help developers from historically marginalized groups to develop properties for more people to be in ownership of. And another important piece of that bill is about creating the social infrastructure as well as physical infrastructure to maintain housing. So could you imagine if the state invested slowly in cooperatively owned tool banks or labor pools or workforce development programs that people could take on the weekend? So on the weekend, outside of our regular work, we could be learning different trades and then helping each other, like barn raising 2026. So like instead of spending so much on contractors whose labor is in demand because we have a workforce shortage, we create more community competency in the trades to help each other, and then that also creates opportunities for people to work part-time for contractors. So we really want to get out of this housing crisis. We're going to have to think differently than the traditional model, and I think the answer isn't about creating long-term government programs that are just going to take money over time. It's about investing the money we have now and building the capacity of communities to maintain it ourselves, separate from the government. So if we create the critical mass of people with the knowledge, sharing it with each other now, then that, regardless of what happens to government spending down the road, the people have something for it. And likewise, if we can, as we build neighborhoods of the future, if we build into the design of the neighborhoods, regenerative agriculture resources like food production and storage and processing facilities, and localized energy generation and localized circular waste management into the infrastructure of neighborhoods, then those investments now aren't going to take a lot to maintain over time because we're regenerating things locally, so we're increasing local independence as well as integration of communities socially and physically. And so that's another area that's important to me, is how can Vermont invest in these kind of things. And I guess another area that I'll throw out there related to this is opioid policy. I was an opioid policy fellow for 2025 with the National Conference of State Legislatures, and the recommendations that I'm bringing forward address these things. So one of them would be to look at a blueprint to turn Vermont into a blue zone. Like, how can we build on our existing assets to create better access to healthy food, exercise, and other determinants of health that have been shown globally to create blue zones, which are areas where people live past 100 in a healthy way. And so we have an opportunity now as we look at creatively investing things on how we can turn Vermont to a blue zone. Another one of these ideas is a pilot project in creating a justice and recovery hub. So instead of building more prisons, redeveloping the block downtown Burlington around the Costello Courthouse to build a residential facility that's a detention reentry facility that's more therapeutic, so that when people get detained, they don't get, in Vermont right now, if you get arrested for a crime and you're detained, you're put in prison next to someone who's convicted and treated the same way, guilty or not. And that causes harm and it wastes money. But if we had detention dormitories where a person could be held at varying levels of security and given rapid response case management and services, guilty or not, they're getting help. And then that could also be used as a reentry facility for people leaving incarceration. So we build that in downtown Burlington next to the courthouse. We'd be following a model that's being used in New York City to create justice hubs. Next to the courthouse is on the borough level as they close Rikers Island. But then what I would propose we do that goes further is that we build spokes, like a hub and spoke model. So we redevelop the block around Costello Courthouse with this facility, 10 storefronts, supportive housing for DCF youth in transition, for mothers who are transitioning out of incarceration, and then an observation deck. It would be the tallest building in Vermont with the recovery tower, and it would have this octagonal prism that would cast rainbows over the city of Burlington as the sun moves. And so it's just, this is sort of one way to think of it. It doesn't have to be so lavish, but the idea is that we instead of building another prison, we could build a new kind of neighborhood around the courthouse in Burlington, and then along the transit spokes, build additional housing and facilities to promote recovery. So it'd be like a recovery and justice hub and spoke model pilot project that would affect Chittenden, Addison, Franklin, Grand Isle, and Washington counties. And then, I guess last but not least, those recommendations, one would be increasing funding for contingency management and neurofeedback. Contingency management is an approach where we use motivational incentives, like financial incentives, to reward people for sobriety. And this is a model that Vermont's already doing, that we would expand that. And neurofeedback is a therapy approach that's been shown to reduce criminogenic behavior, because for people who are justice involved, if they learn through neurofeedback, which uses like video games or TV to show a person their brain state, and then they learn how to like meditate and achieve the desired mental state, and it shows you when you're doing it by the way that the screen is responding. So it goes in and out of focus, for example. That kind of training builds emotional regulation and impulse control, and by building those skills, it reduces criminal behavior for people. So like it's a promising area of treatment that I'm suggesting we invest in, like exploring using for justice involved individuals. And then the last innovative treatment, which I think is one of the most significant, is psychedelic assisted therapy. Research is showing that psychedelic assisted therapy is very effective for treating trauma, addiction, co-occurring disorders, and Vermont had a psychedelic therapy working group that recommended further study, but we haven't acted on it. And so one of my opioid policy recommendations is we created a psychedelic therapy advisory board that would look at rolling out pilot projects and using mushrooms for end-of-life care and for addiction and trauma treatment. And then it also directs Vermont to join the Texas Consortium, which is a group of 13 states led by Republicans in Texas that are exploring clinical drug trials for ibogaine, which is a psychedelic medicine coming from the African shrub iboga. And it's a miracle medicine. It's the only compound known to humans that resets our neurotransmitters and gene pathways with the whole body. And It also is it's the only medicine we found that's effective for psychostimulant treatment. So for people who are addicted to meth as well as opioids, it can reset a person's brain so that 24 hours after they take the medicine, their brain resembles a brain 18 months after sobriety, just neurochemically. And so there's 13 other states already doing this. So there's no reason why Vermont can't be the 14th state. So I just said a lot. There's obviously more I'm interested in, but hopefully that gives you a taste of the wide range of public health and public safety policy changes we could be making right now that don't necessarily cost more, just like spending better.
Absolutely. And then just to wrap up, if anybody has any further questions about what you talked about, any concerns, what's the best way to reach you?
Passenger pigeon. No. I would say like the best way to reach me is to email, although it's hard because we get hundreds of emails. But you can email me here. That would be the best way to do it. And if I don't respond the first time, just send another one. All right.
Representative Cina, thank you so much for taking the time to tell us about the incredible work you're doing.
Thank you.
My name is Thomas Chittenden. I represent Chittenden Southeast, which is 11 communities. It's the south end of Burlington, so south of Maple Street, South Burlington, Charlotte, Shelburne, Heinsberg, St. George, Williston, Bolton, Jericho, Underhill. And I always worry I miss somebody. Did I say South Burlington? But that should be
You've got it down. So tell us, what committee or committees are you on, and what priorities have come up this session, and what are some of the things that you're working on?
My morning committee is economic development and housing, and my afternoon committee is finance. And I would say that actually is the two priorities I have. Is one, we need to find ways to make property taxes lower. It is driving people out of the state, bankrupt, and causing a lot of financial stress. So I am spending a lot of time working on what the governor's put forward, as well as what the redistricting task force has on ways to rationalize our school governance to serve our kids in the best ways possible, thinking differently than we have over the last 50 years. The other thing that's really important to me is housing. We need to continue to reform our regulatory environment. We just data that was presented yesterday and is in my inbox is Vermont is now the 50th state in population growth. We are seeing less people live here, and that's our compounding problem, is that we made it too darn hard to build a house in this state. And Act 250 has done great things over the last 50 years, but we need to reform it because it's done too much in preserving our landscapes, preventing human habitat growth so that more people can stay here, live here, work here, and thrive here. So housing and property tax reductions are my top priorities. We also have the climate crisis in the background, and of course what's happening in the federal government is just a constant refrain that we are reacting to more than I wish, but it's just the world that we're in right now.
Are there any particular bills that you want to highlight?
Sure. Well, you always want to highlight the bills you introduced. So I have a really small bill, whenever you hear that. It's about a very uncommon childhood illness that affects 1 out of 12,000 kids. There's only about 7 of them. There's this really well-known treatment that has proven efficacy that currently insurance companies in Vermont don't cover. And so one bill I have, I forget the bill number, would mandate that insurance companies do provide coverage for IVIG treatments. It's, again, not a lot of money, but other states have required this because it works so well. I've got another bill on commercial property assessed clean energy, which would make it easier to put solar panels over parking lots, which is where they belong. So that's S138. And then another bill on just looking at our property tax credit in the context of SSI income. Then there's some other ones, but those are 3 that come to mind.
Well, really important work that you're doing this session. Before I let you go, you've been to CCTV, Town Meeting TV, many, many times. We're in a double election year, lots of election coverage going on in the studio. Could you maybe speak to a little bit what you see the value of community media is?
Sure. It's critical. We need to find ways to support local journalism, including CCTV. You are the backbone and the glue that keeps our communities together, that makes Vermont more neighborly. So every time I campaign, I exclusively spend my dollars on local papers. I don't know if you all do ads, but I always give you my time. And if there's other ways, and I think I write a support check, I understand your financing model. But we need to find better ways to fund CCTV. I do fully support a streaming tax on streaming service providers in line with the cable service fee that's been in place place since the 80s. Actually, we passed a bill last session on that. I hope we come back to it. I understand Canada has done this exact thing in order to fund local community television and broadcasting. So we need more of it, and we need to have a dedicated financing source because of the importance you all have to our communities.
Hello, I am Senator Kesha Ram Hinsdale. I also represent Chittenden Southeast alongside Senator Chittenden and Senator Lyons. I also happen to serve as the Senate Majority Leader. I am in my 14th year in the legislature and 6th year in the Senate. And I think the viewers at home know there are a confluence of factors from the federal government to a lot of historic and unprecedented events happening that are influencing our job here. My number one priority is to make life more affordable for Vermonters, to increase their quality of life and lower their cost of living. That encompasses, frankly, protecting Vermonters from a lot of the federal attacks and chaos that are coming our way. We, as you may have heard, have a number of bills and resolutions related to protecting Vermonters from ICE and federal overreach around immigration. Many of those will be coming to the floor next week from Senate Judiciary. I serve on Senate Economic Development and Senate Education, and that is where a lot of our conversations about how to make Vermont more affordable are taking place. Many Vermonters know my biggest passion and priority has been housing for the last 3 years. That certainly continues. It's a lot of cleaning up what we did in our last housing bills to make sure it's working for people and building housing where we know we want and need housing, bringing down the cost of rent, trying to end homelessness. So that remains my biggest priority. Another priority economically is career technical education. I try to highlight for Vermonters a lot lately that 40% of our students go on to 2- and 4-year degrees, and we shouldn't consider the other 60% having failed at something. That is a national trend and average, and those other 60% of students may need some certification or guidance, but they don't need a 2- or 4-year degree to be successful and get a great job and have a meaningful life. So we are trying to work on making sure career technical education is as universally available as academic center education. And right now there are a lot of denials and a lot of wait lists, even in Chittenden County, for career technical education. So we're trying to change that as we look to education reform more broadly. Finally, my job when I was chair of economic development was to make sure if we legalize something, we were creating a vibrant market and we were supporting our craft industry. That's been true with beer, wine, and spirits for a long time. And now that's true with cannabis. We are looking at another federal change that may come down the pike that deschedules cannabis. And should that happen, we want our craft industry to have its brand, its quality, and its well-being protected. And so that's another big priority of mine in economic development.
Great, and really lots of important work being done here. Can you tell us a little bit about what being Senate Majority Leader means and entails?
I can do my best. So, another Chittenden County senator is Senator Phil Baruth, who is the Senate President pro tempore. I won't even get into that, but it somewhat mirrors the federal Senate in that the Vice President of the United States presides over the Senate, much like the Lieutenant Governor presides over the Senate formally here in the state. The Senate President is in charge of leading the Senate for all 30 members, the Democrats and Republicans, and being the Majority Leader means I am the voice of the Majority Caucus. In this case, it's the Democratic Caucus, and I'm very proud of that. But I also am in my 14th year here, and I learned from a lot of good Republican colleagues that, you're all in the same boat, and the majority steers the ship, the minority points out the rocks. We all have to be able to get along and work together, and that's certainly what we strive for, even in this very divided climate that we're in.
I really like the ship analogy, and Totally, and that one of the best parts about being here at the State House is just and having interviews with the senators and representatives is just it kind of demystifies like what goes on here, and it's really wonderful how accessible it is for the public to come to the State House and see what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to bring it down in mood a notch, but my friend from grad school was Melissa Hortman, who was assassinated in Minnesota. We've been through some really intense debates here in Vermont, whether it's been marriage equality or gun control, talking about people's basic rights or, big, heavy topics. And we have done so without violence and largely without the threat of violence. I hope that continues. We now do have to think about our security a little bit more and the security of our visitors, but this remains the people's house. I think, especially viewers at home in Chittenden County might like to know that we are well along in our effort to install a portrait of the first Black woman to serve in the legislature from South Burlington, Luvenia Dorsey Bright. I am only the second woman of color who has ever served in the Vermont legislature. We now have more. I'm still the only woman of color who's served in the Senate. But we all stand on the shoulders of Luvenia Dorsey Bright, and that will be the first portrait of a woman of color that hangs in the State House. So we want people to know they're not only welcome here, but we hope they see themselves reflected here more and more.
That's an incredible point to end on and emphasize, and really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and speak with your constituents, and thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you, and thanks for watching and listening and making sure your government is serving you. That's what we're here for.
So thank you for coming and talking with us. Do you want to quick introduce yourselves and say what school you work for?
I am Jenny Perry, and I'm school counselor at Westminster Center School.
I'm Janelle Beard. I'm Integrated Arts and Studio Y.
Mandy Walsh, librarian and sustainability educator.
Kelly Halleck, second grade teacher.
Awesome. And so I noticed everyone was tabling downstairs today. We got the chance to check it out. Really cool stuff. Would you guys like the opportunity to talk about what kind of things you were displaying at your tables, what kind of projects the kids have been working with you on with you in your departments?
Yeah, we came today really to celebrate and showcase some of the great work that our students are doing, and we were so excited to have the opportunity to talk about the rural schools and what we have to offer for our students. So, you want to talk about our Studio Y?
At our school, we have a program called Studio Y, which is experiential education. Students come over for a full day immersion experience. They usually meet a character who's tied to their curriculum in some way that they have to help problem solve a situation. And then in the afternoon, they design projects and have a makerspace time. All in all, pretty great.
I am both librarian and sustainability educator. I spend a lot of time with students outdoors and indoors with books. One of the favorite things about my job is getting to collaborate and having the time to collaborate with the educators in my building and continue to work outdoors in these ways.
And as a classroom teacher, I take my students outdoors. So we do outdoor education, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. And so we have forest classrooms, we have a greenhouse, we do cooking in the garden. And so we were able to showcase some of the wonderful things we do outside.
It's all really cool stuff, and checking it out was really exciting, and you could tell that the kids were having fun while they were doing it. So would you like to talk about your experience tabling today, like the kind of people you got to talk to, kind of conversations you got to have at all? Yeah?
Yeah, we had some really rich conversations with students from other schools, so it was really neat to network with them and get some ideas of how we can improve what we're doing and kind of get an exposure to other ways that we can improve. We also spoke with other school leaders and some community members.
Yeah, no, I think that's good.
I am eternally impressed by children.
yeah,
and their
absolutely.
ability to have conversation and advocate for the things that they're doing in their schools and converse with us about that.
Yeah.
We had the experience of talking to the lieutenant governor as well, and that was really felt really promising and powerful to hear his views on things. And I think increasing that dialogue between many stakeholders is going to benefit us as educators, our schools, and our communities.
Hi, I'm Rep. Saudia LaMont. I represent Loyal Washington District. That is Morristown, Elmore, Worcester, Woodbury, and a small part of Stowe.
Amazing. And tell us a little bit about what committee or committees you serve on, and any priorities that have arose this session, or anything you want to highlight the work that's been done in those committees so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So far this year, I serve on the General and Housing Committee. And so far this year, we've been discussing our housing bills. Landlord-tenant is very important to me. I have a bill coming up for H440. It's coming up next week, actually, but there are several other landlord-tenant bills that are coming up, so we're going to address them all at the same time simultaneously, look at the bills, look at the similarities, the differences, take testimony, and do all those things, which I really appreciate about our committee. So far, this session has been off to a pretty reasonable start. In my opinion, given everything that's happening around the world right now. The world is on fire, right? And I'm definitely deeply feeling the impacts of that. So showing up, right, this is where we are. And for me, it's really just been a matter of trying to maintain that boundary of keeping the line between fact and feeling, right? However, sometimes things are, in fact, so detrimental that it significantly impacts your feelings. And so, as we deal with our labor issues and our housing issues and our civil rights issues, which are all the things that we address in our committee, living in the body that I live in, I have a very different experience and perspective and vantage point on the way I see the world, the way the world sees me, and what that looks like, as well as for the people in my community. And so I am trying to hold all of those things at the same time, and just make really, really good decisions.
Yeah, and it's a lot. There's a lot going on just generally in the legislature and the State House, and so when you add everything else on, it's a lot. It's a lot. But it sounds like you're doing incredible work. And is there anything else that you're really passionate about or believe in that's outside of the committee you serve on that you'd like to highlight?
Yes, there are some education bills that are out right now. I do not have the numbers. There's way too many. There's number salad and letter salad in here, alphabet soup and number salad. Right, all the bills and numbers. But I really would like to see us amplify and uplift student voice. And so they're talking about voting to have students as voting parties on school boards. I really support that. I support looking at our hazing, harassment, and bullying, and making sure that we're addressing the harm that our students are experiencing. Really looking at the quality of education that our students are getting, and just really enhancing the overall education experience. That's something that's not in my committee that I'm passionate about, as well as environment. You know, I'm in housing, however, we cannot discuss zoning and environment. We're heading off to a joint hearing now with the Commerce Committee and to discuss a bill, but because they do the taxes, right? So there's so many different parties that work together, and that's the other part that is not in our committee. So it's like land use is an energy, is an environment, and then you have the taxes, and TIF is in commerce, but yet we're talking about housing, and we have to have these collaborative conversations, so it's really challenging to navigate that. And so, but I'm really, really passionate about trying to find amiable solutions to really address the issues that they're challenging, but if we have the political fortitude, we can get through this, you know, and let's find solutions so that we have housing for all, so that our people have health care, so that people are taken care of, and we're just really protecting Vermonters. You know, we're looking out for all Vermonters and making sure we're taking care of our most vulnerable. especially our older Vermonters. We don't like people forget. There's so many different demographics, and we get stuck in our zones and in our lanes. And it's like, oh yeah, what about my neighbor? Right? So outside of committee, I'm just really trying to keep a pulse on the things that are impacting the most vulnerable, especially our youth and our older Vermonters, and making sure we're taking care of our people, our planet, and our communities.
Really great point to end on and emphasize there. I love that. Before we wrap up, I just want to ask you if your constituents have any questions, concerns, want to reach you for any way, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Thank you. So the best way for folks to reach out to me is by phone or text. So that number would be 802-335-2334. or lamontforvermont@gmail.com. You can also find me on the state legislature website, etc. I'm very easy to find. However, the lamontforvermont@gmail.com is going to be the most likely way to find me, and phone or text.